The fact of the matter is the right to work issue is a battle between workers and union officials. There are no other parties to this battle because union officials believe that if workers are given the choice to decide whether or not to financially support a labor union, they might leave. And that's the problem with the issue of forced unionism. I want to bring to your attention, you mentioned the Ford contract that just came up, but I want to talk with you about the language on page 2 of that contract, which is the most important element of the contract according to the United Auto Workers. Here's what it says. Employees covered by this agreement at this time become effective and who are members of the union at the time shall be required as a condition of continued employment to continue membership in the union for the duration of this agreement. Employees covered by this agreement who are not members of the union at the time of this agreement becomes effective shall be required as a condition of continued employment to become members of the union on or within 10 days of the effectiveness date of this contract. As an individual employee reading that and a union official coming to you say you have to pay union dues as a condition of getting or keeping a job, you have to be a member of the union, what would an ordinary person say about that language? It basically reeks of compulsion.
The pressure the union exerted on us regarding the loss of our employment and salary decrease was abominable. As public defenders, we are under pressure and stress daily. The guidance, assistance, and encouragement that the National Right to Work attorney, Byron Andrus, provided was invaluable in alleviating the concerns we had in dealing with an area of law with which we are not familiar. As attorneys, we do have a level of sophistication when it comes to the law and legal processes. However, I cannot imagine a layperson having to face this type of pressure. I believe that most people sign union membership and authorization cards because they believe they have no choice, and they are often told that. If we had the protections offered by the National Right to Work Act, we would not have had to endure the harassment we faced. I do not believe any employee should be compelled to pay fees of any kind to a union. Unions argue that non-members may benefit from being represented by a union and therefore, in fairness, should pay. However, the simple response to that argument is that the decision should be left up to the individual to decide if she or he is benefited by the union. If the individual decides they want the benefit of representation by a union, then they can voluntarily pay.
I found the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation, which agreed to represent me to ensure my Beck rights were protected. Little did we know this would end up being a 12-year legal battle that was litigated up and down the National Labor Relations Board chain and in 2 separate United States Court of Appeals circuits just to secure the proper dues reduction that I was owed in accordance with Supreme Court precedent. As my written testimony details, my litigation against this union took over 12 years in 2 separate United States Court of Appeals. After I resigned my membership and objected to pay for the union's political and non-representational activities under the Beck decision, the union refused to give us audited financial disclosure of how it spent our dues, and in fact, spent our forced dues money lobbying the Rhode Island and Vermont legislatures. With the foundation's representation, I initiated an unfair labor practice charge against UNAP with the NLRB on November 23, 2009. That began my 12-year odyssey to protect my rights. My 12 years of litigation proves that the Beck objection system is broken and does not protect employees' rights to refrain from funding union politics and union-endorsed politicians. Unions do not tell employees about their rights because they have no incentive to do so. And regular employees like me cannot afford to take on these legal battles by themselves. Without lawyers like the National Right to Work Legal Foundation, we are left to fend for ourselves against unions that have no regard for the law or Supreme Court precedent. For all of these reasons, I wholeheartedly support the National Right to Work Act so that no employee will be forced to pay his or her hard-earned money to a private and unaccountable organization they do not support. This is America, and membership in a union and payment of dues should be strictly voluntary. Employees can make their own decisions about whether they are benefited or harmed by the union that has been installed in their workplace. Thank you for your attention.
Ms. Geary, according to your written testimony, when you worked as a nurse at Kent Hospital in Rhode Island, the hospital was unionized by the United Nurses and Allied Professionals. You did not vote for or support the union. However, under federal law, you were forced to be represented and work under a collective bargaining agreement negotiated by a union you did not support. Can you discuss whether you think it's fair that you were forced to associate with a union that you wanted nothing to do with?
No, I don't think it is fair that I was forced to participate and pay dues and fees in this union. As a matter of fact, not only was I forced to do so, but because I was outspoken as to my opinion regarding this union, I was punished. I was punished on the job. I was punished personally. I was followed home at night. I was threatened by union reps. I was told my car would be keyed. It was a nightmare for me. I hear a lot here about unions and the wonderful things they do, but I think a lot of this is a facade. I represent the reality of what really happens to people who want to exercise their First Amendment rights of freedom of speech and freedom of association. And that is how I feel. This is America. We should be allowed to choose. And if unions are that good, they will sell themselves.
Yeah, I think you're right. I agree with you completely.
Ms. Geary, would you say that forced union membership, forced union dues had a positive impact on your or your coworkers' relationship with your employer?
No, not at all. That was one of the biggest regrets and why 150 nurses signed my decertification petition. And it's because we didn't know that once a union came in, we would not have access to our managers and administrators in order to manage our own jobs. We are professionals, and all of a sudden we were cut off from the decision-making process of caring for our patients.
Did you have the opportunity to work in a right-to-work state also?
I was in North Carolina for a decade, and things there were very, very different. I moved there after I lived in Rhode Island, as a matter of fact, and I made about double the pay. I felt more supported.
Pardon me, you made about double the pay in North Carolina?
In North Carolina, yes, sir.
Without the help of a union?
Pardon?
Without the help of a union, you made double the pay.
I was making around
Make sure that was
25 something in Rhode Island. In North Carolina, I was making $50 to $60 an hour with an open door policy that I could talk to administration or management at any time. Now, we all had frustrations, of
I'm sorry, I have to
course.
interrupt a second. So you mean your employer paid you double without a union forcing that to happen?
In North Carolina?
Yeah.
Right. I was offered a job with double the pay than I was receiving in Rhode Island with the union in place. That is correct.
Very good. Ms. Vargas, if I may, UAW officials threatened to claw back a salary increase that you received and threatened your employment when you didn't sign the card to allow the automatic dues deduction from your paycheck. How do you think if a national right to work had been in place, how that might have been different for you?
I would not I would not have to have dealt with it at all. I wouldn't have had to even file with the NLRB. I could have negotiated for myself. And probably, I believe I would have gotten a better salary increase if I negotiated for myself. But I wouldn't have had to endure what we faced, being threatened to lose our jobs after almost 30 years working there, and defending. And that became the other problem. They changed the nature of my office, where it became so focused on the union and not what we were really there for, which was to provide defense for indigent clients.